This is the DEI Advisory Committee. We'll start with attendance. We'll go around the room, say who's here. Rob, we'll start with you.
Sure. Rob Mezzanotte, Assistant Superintendent.
Sally Davidson, Equity, Belonging, and Community Engagement Coordinator.
Shivali Finkelstein, Principal at North Kingstown High School.
Mary Lowe Presti, Parent Advocate.
Jennifer Lima, School Committee Member.
May Lucy, person, parent.
William Moss, junior at NK High School.
Victoria Cormier, junior at NKHS. Jacqueline Waller, teacher at DMS.
Sue Curley, school psychologist at Quinnesset.
Awesome. Thank you. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes from the October 9th meeting? Can I get a motion to approve those, please?
I motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, awesome. All right. Perfect. Next on the agenda is to introduce our new member. Rob, would you like to do the honors?
Yes, absolutely. Let me introduce Sally Davidson, our new Equity, Belonging, Community Engagement Coordinator. Sally's been on board here for a few weeks. We're thrilled to have her. She's really fit in extremely well. She's really started to do some great work and very important work for our district, looking at a variety of things, including obviously equity focus, and also just getting to know our school culture and communities, introducing herself to various people. She's been sitting in on various advisory club meetings, and also the community engagement piece. She's really taken the lead on making sure that we are communicating all the great things that are going on in our district, all the great things our students are doing and our teachers, and all the good stuff happening in our schools. So.
Yep, I'm really happy to be here and meet you all. Some of you I haven't had the privilege of meeting in person. So, and I want to thank this committee too for creating a position like this. I think it's awesome. And yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on what Rob's saying, I've been trying to just meet as many people as I can, hear what the needs are for the kids and the staff, and with the community engagement piece, that's been a fun one for me to just jump right in on. I've been able to write some press releases about some positive things that are happening already at NK, so I've gotten those out recently, so that's been a lot of fun, and yeah, loving the job, so thank you all.
I saw the write-up you did for the Forest Park composting program. That was great. That was really good.
Thanks.
Anybody have any questions about Sally or her position? I'm so glad to have you here. We've been waiting a long time for you, so it's great to have you. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you tell us like a little bit about your background?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I was teaching for the last 8.5 years, we'll say, because I was teaching about 4 weeks ago. So I began my teaching career when I was 27 in Queens, New York. I taught 9th grade English at a high-performing public school in Queens, and then I moved back this way. I grew up in Connecticut, and so I moved back to be close to family, and I was teaching for the last 5.5 years in Ledyard, Connecticut at the middle school. And then about a year and a half ago, I wanted some more leadership kind of opportunities, so I looked into an administrative training program. I went to Sacred Heart, and it is a social justice educational leadership program. So yeah, I've done a handful of the courses there and did earn the 092 in Connecticut and the Rhode Island Building Administrator cert. So I was looking for something quasi-administrative, and it felt like this was a really great opportunity for me to apply, some of the skills that I was acquiring through that program and through my administrative internship, but also because so much of the coursework has been really focused on, equity initiatives. I felt like it was a great way for me to apply some of the learning as well, so.
My mother-in-law used to teach in that program.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I was at the one at Griswold High School in Connecticut, so it's very small. We get really familiar with our professors. In fact, I just reached out to one today with a question. So yeah, they're great. I loved it there. Yeah.
So, and you know that NK and like Queens are very different.
Yes.
Because my son lives in Queens now, and I'm thinking that's a very different,
yes,
exciting place.
That has been like the challenge in the last few weeks, but I feel like people have been so like forward with me about what the needs are, and I have been able to do a ton of research. Kenny and Rob have been giving me like the leeway to sit at my desk and really just like dive into data. I did a really close read of the equity audit, and I feel like I'm all the time gaining more and more perspective on what the needs are in the schools, but also in the community. Like today I got to go over to Kingstown Crossings and sit in on one of their staff meetings. I've spent a lot of time with Lydia at the Office of Family Learning already, so I feel like everyone has been really forthcoming with the information that I need to, hopefully bring some perspective and some issues. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Awesome. So we had at our last meeting some action items that people were following up on, like in between the meeting. And I know that some of you all had a Post-it note party. Does somebody want to report out on that?
Yeah, I can start. I can send an email right now, and I was thinking of maybe we would pull them up on the board even. We put some slides together, so those of you who do have tech, I'll send an email, and you can open them up. I'm just gonna respond to your email, Jen, for today's meeting. I drafted it already. So the slides show basically our takeaways after looking at every single Post-it. What we tried to do was we created a sheet that we thought represented all of the Post-it feedback. And for those of you who need the background, basically during the March PD Day last year, or last spring, teachers wrote on Post-its what initiatives they thought we should start at NKSD, what initiatives they thought we should continue, and what we should stop. So what we did was we created a sheet where we put all the start ideas on one tab, all the continue ideas on another tab, and all of the stop ideas on another tab. And then we tried to boil down the trends among the Post-its to 4 start ideas, 4 continue ideas, and 4 stop ideas. So I can pull up the slides.
If I'm the only one with that tech, you do not have to.
I can't get on the
Whatever's
Wi-Fi, so I love that we're pulling them up.
All right, cool.
It's being used to me today.
Yeah, I think
Thank you.
I think the visual
It'll
is
click out
nice.
eventually.
Yes, I can.
You put
It
together
just
some
means
beautiful
it's a
slides,
more
Sally. We
joint
should
thing
really,
as
we
opposed
should
to-
show them off.
Well, you know,
Thank you.
UDL and I know there's a lot of visual learners out there, so I think these are helpful. Let's see if they're at the top of my drive. Oh, password again.
Cause it's like our first time logging in.
I got it wrong.
No,
I know.
it's wrong.
All right, there it is. All right. So the 4, what we thought. I didn't show the accent. Start ideas. There was a lot of hope for redistricting from the teachers. There was a lot of hope. This kind of connects to the continue. Kind of, you know, the continue Post-its. A lot of people want to continue the sort of PD that happened that day, especially I think the presentation that they heard from Dr. Kayon, and forgive me, I don't know the name of the
Johnson.
Okay. So this kind of connects to the start here was to start small group DEI work, because a lot of people felt that the whole district staff DEI discussion was great, but that they would love to break out into smaller groups, whether it be like departments or grade teams or whatever, to continue those conversations. They wanted us to start including even more voices, listening to all. I got the sense from the Post-its that included parents and students. just as much as like school staff and school leaders. And then hiring a more diverse staff, we saw a lot. Sue and Jacqueline, do you want to add anything as far as what you remember seeing? So at the end, it's only 4 slides. You can see these are all of the ideas.
Yeah, so Sally very beautifully linked the raw data, so you
Right.
can look at like every post-it if you wanted to, but the slides sort of represent, like we tallied up all the ones that were similar to one another, and yeah, divided them out into start, continue, and stop. But then you'll notice that some of the, even within that framework, there's some repeats. So it'll be like, start doing more DEI work, stop doing anything other than DEI work, continue doing DEI work, right? So it's kind of the same idea, repeated a few different times. I don't know if you wanna go back to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to speak about continue?
Sure, yeah, so like some of the things that people, teachers in the district thought we are doing well and want us to continue, is this sort of PD around DEI and discussions about race specifically. Continue listening to staff, so there were plenty of staff that did feel listened to and heard, and they want that to continue. Continue celebrating the assets of staff and students, not just academic, so yeah, valuing all of the wonderful accomplishments of our students and staff. And then continue having high expectations for students was another thing that was echoed across many of the post-its, which was good.
Yeah, I believe asset-based thinking was one of the terms that was discussed in the PD, right? So I think some of this.
Do you mind talking a little more about that, because I think that's an important concept, just so everyone understands it, asset-based thinking.
Yeah, so my understanding, and I wasn't present at this past PD, is really just that we make sure that we view all of our students as having assets, whether they be academic or cultural, or maybe they're really talented artistically or whatever it may be, and just always viewing our students as people that have, I don't know,
It's
if I'm
framing them-
being as
framing
articulate
them
as I could be.
Framing them in a positive,
Right.
position. For example,
No
and the reason-
matter
yeah,
they're
and
standing academically or.
and this could be a trap that educators fall into a lot, because a lot of times the conversations come around to focusing on what students are struggling with, or what students can't do, or what students need help with, or need support with. All well-intentioned, right? All well-intentioned. However, what happens a lot of times is the intentions end up becoming a deficit mindset thinking. Whereas we are, and that is that can really be an energy that's projected onto kids where it can kind of have negative effects. So flipping that around and really looking at things from an asset-based perspective and understanding that kids all present with skills and talents that are valuable and unique, and making that the focus of conversations and not always about the other way.
Yeah, I think some scholars do even go so far as to say, well, some of the language we use, like economically disadvantaged, is deficit-based focused,
Yeah.
right? And so trying to get a little bit away from that without neglecting the facts. Okay, so stop. The stop trends were stop listening to the few loud voices in the community, and fearing, I think, reaction from the community when we try new things, especially related to DEI. Stop kicking students out of class. Stop ignoring equity issues because they are difficult to tackle. Stop allowing testing to drive teaching. So again, you can look through these tabs down at the bottom. We'll show you more of the continue ideas and more of the stop ideas. Sue, did you want to add anything?
Well, no, I wanna invite, right? I
Right.
want you to invite you guys to look at the individual, even if it's just now for a minute, invite you to look at the individual responses and see if something strikes you. Because even a small group can get into groupthink, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I think we all have different perspectives, but some commonalities. So I would like to hear if there's something in there that strikes you that we didn't capture.
One thing that struck me when I was at the PD and I got to look at the Post-it notes on the wall. And so one of the things that I think is important to highlight in what we were talking about is the redistricting conversation isn't just redistricting to get the numbers equal. It's redistricting to improve diversity in all schools. So I think that's a really important piece to highlight of the feedback that we got it wasn't just numbers. It was intentionality behind that. So I heard that really clearly from the teachers.
I'm gonna have that right now.
The one thing I see just from looking at this individual data quickly is that like the overwhelmingly most, and forgive me, I have a horrible migraine, so I'm like not formulating thoughts. The most responses for anything of all of them individually were like to continue the conversation around this type of PD, and I think that really stands out. So I think that's something that should be paid attention to, and open communication in this area. That number is like almost double than anything else.
Yeah, Susan and I worked really hard not to just like to report out what was on the post-its as opposed to like imposing our own like ideas onto it, and just being like, well, we wrote 2 post-its and those are the right ones, so.
You're giving me more credit, because I'll impose my ideas all over the place, and my 2 colleagues were like, well, where do you see that in the data? But that is why you have to have colleagues to do the work with you.
This was really great that you all put this together, because I know it's not easy to like go take all these post-it notes, but I think you painted a really clear picture of it, so thank you for summarizing this all.
Thank you, Sally. Like, you did a lot of great admin work that me and Susan were like, that's nice, thank you for putting together slides.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah.
They're
I
beautiful.
can carve out the time. You
Thank
guys
you.
are busy.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really important work to me. I think it's so important that we respond to the staff's needs and what they see as the best course of action moving forward.
So that was one of the things, Susan, you said after the last one, like making sure that the staff hears that we heard them. Is this something that can be like fed back out to them so that they see this also?
Yeah, we had talked about potentially, I don't know if this is the format, if you guys like this, then yeah, I'm for sending this exactly out to the staff, but we had talked about, I think Rob with you too, just making sure that they feel this does accurately reflect
Right.
their thoughts and feelings around these items, so.
I think it's important, Jen, to make sure that they feel heard, but it has to have something behind it.
Right.
Like it's been 6
A year.
months,
Yeah, 6
7
months,
months. And so I do think if we send something out, like saying, and the next thing is,
Like a
like,
action plan.
yeah, we gotta
Right.
have something, because if we just say, oh, thank you so much, 6 months later, like, I'd be
They
like,
don't.
okay.
DEI.
Yeah, I'd be like, that's nice. So
I
it's
agree.
not,
Yes.
it's like it's an and on your statement, like, and
Yeah.
let's have the next
Yes,
step for
yes.
them if we are gonna communicate
Yes.
something.
So I had a question and a comment. I really like this format. I don't think I've ever seen like what I'd call like a scattered bulleted list. And I don't know, I mean, maybe I learn differently, but it really makes it stand out, so, is that like part of the template, or did you?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
It's got the template. I found it visually appealing.
I like
so
it.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah,
You
I
did too.
definitely like it. So, looking at the post-it, the ones that were tallied, the third one down, hiring more diverse candidates. I don't think in Rhode Island, I guess I am just one of these people, I'm always been a people watcher, and like when I go anywhere, I kind of like look around and realize Rhode Island it's a very white state. Like if I go say to visit, like when my son went to college in Baltimore, or I have another child at school in Washington, or the one who lives in Queens, and then you come back, you realize it's a very white state. Just sort of looking at like racial diversity, not looking at all the others. And so I just wonder what's underneath that challenge of hiring more diverse candidates, like how
Well, if
do
we
you
take
get
it,
them? I just wanna finish one
Yeah.
second, cause I'm just thinking, could there be some, not just for NK, but collaboration with the schools of education? URI, Rick, Salve, Regina, and because I don't think that if students, if they don't see a teacher who looks similar to them, they're likely not going, there's, I think, a higher likelihood that they're not going to think that that could be a potential career path for them. So I think there's like a little bit more, I don't think it's as simple as we just hire more diverse candidates, so, anyway.
I mean, yes, you're certainly right that they're in the pipeline from like education institutes to like we require humans with certifications. Yes, there is a pipeline issue between like students of color learning to become teachers and then becoming teachers and we hire them. But if we just look at, the state of the Rhode Island has a 69% white, I just Googled it. We are not, so like,
We're not even
30% non-white, we are not even close. So it's, it's one thing to say like, Rhode Island is predominantly white, but we're not even close.
Yeah, we're
to
disproportionately white in our
disproportionately
teaching
white in our
staff.
district,
Yeah.
yes, and in our teaching staff. So I always think it's like a little bit of a cop-out to be like, well, where are the teachers of color? Like, do we actively seek them out? Do we put the job postings in places where they will see? Do we reach out to other states? Are we actively communicating with Rick, URI, Salve, to make sure that they are recruiting, like educators of color? So like, yes, it is a problem and we're not even close. We're not even close.
When you say we're not even close, I'm sorry.
In like the percentage of teachers that we have hired
Yes.
and like people.
We meaning North Kingstown.
We meaning North Kingstown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
We
there
are-
other
we don't have
districts that
30%.
we can use as models for
I don't know.
having done that? Because that's again, I don't have data to back this up, but my general feeling, having worked in a few different districts, is that's not a North Kingstown problem. It is a North Kingstown problem, but it's a bigger problem.
It's a big
than
problem.
North-
It's a
yeah.
bigger problem.
It's a big
Yeah,
problem.
it's a problem across the
At the same
educational.
time, we have not
yeah.
done any of those things that Jacqueline just said.
Yeah.
So we
And when I
yeah.
worked at TAPA, which is a charter school in Providence, and again, like, different school, different setting, but, it was explicitly named in the job posting, like, we are prioritizing the hiring of
We did finally
did
do
that.
people of color,
finally.
right?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so like,
We didn't
to
do
name
that.
that and to put it
No, we
in.
didn't do that, but we did say that we value
You did make a
diversity.
progress. You made
Finally,
progress.
right.
Yes.
According to Dr. Google,
They hired me and I'm white, you know what I mean? But like,
81% of teachers in Rhode Island are white,
Yeah.
and 60% of the
Yes.
population, so.
But like, again, like just to kind of go to the point, like, and not to get off track here, but like that is a major problem that's been identified, right? It was identified obviously by our staff, it was identified by the equity audit, right? It was pulled, actually it wasn't identified by the equity audit because we pulled it out of the equity audit to begin with, but that is like, it has been statistically proven, right, that like representation matters, right? Not just for the students of color, but for white students also, right? Like it matters all the way around. And like we as a district, and it's not unique to North Kingstown, but we need to do better in that area, right? Not just in
Yeah.
race, but in all
And
areas.
I agree with that. I just also wanna make sure we're contexting it with the fact that we have to do better, but we can only do better if we work with others as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we're talking about, like the colleges who recruit teachers of the profession, like other districts to collaborate together to make this an issue that is shared.
But we have to actually do something to do better.
Yes,
And so we need to start doing.
yes.
Does North Kingstown go like to other states, like to Massachusetts, New York, to like job fairs? Like I remember in graduate
It's tricky
school,
with certifications.
pardon me?
It's tricky with certifications, like it's hard.
Yeah.
Is there reciprocity?
Not in all of them.
For some, but not all,
Most.
yeah.
The other thing too, like, so two things I'm gonna say. We have here in Rhode Island the TA to BA program. We've yet to reach out to them. So that's like issue number one. Issue number two is like, do we have a safe environment for teachers of color to come to, right? And until we solve some of these problems here, like, that's gonna be the other issues.
So, yeah, and so we can get back to the sticky notes, because we're getting a little, no, but like, what I think I'm hearing is a lot of passion about this, which we know we've talked about this before, but I also think, like, for really big problems, like systemic problems, like Rob was talking about, I was just trying to focus on what can we do here, like, in this teeny tiny space, right, and like, what are a couple very tangible things, because there's lots of research and lots of data about how to recruit diverse staff, like, this is not, like, new in the world, so I think it's just, for NK, being really intentional about it, and then also making sure that we have support mechanisms for teachers that we're bringing into the district to make sure that they're successful, so like, and that's, the hiring is the administration's purview, of course, but I think where this committee can really influence is advising the school committee on resources that might be needed, or advising the school committee on things that we think might be worth working with the administration on, like, it's, I think it just has to I hear the frustration, Jen, but I think we need to like just focus on, like, there's very many thousands of reasons to blame, a lot, but like, what can we do to try to start like improving?
I also do want
it?
to point out the fact that, again, I'm not sitting here saying that this is not a problem. I am not doing that. I'm not saying that this isn't something we should be looking at, just going to be clear. However, we also have to point out the fact that we have hired teachers of color here in the last couple of years. We've hired leaders of color here in recent history. We've made some progress there. And we've hired highly qualified, good people to do these jobs. So I just want to make sure that we're also not, we're focused on where we want to be. We focus on getting better, but we're also acknowledging that we have taken some steps.
Well, and I think that's where we were looking for that baseline data too, Rob, because, and I don't know if we ever got it, but we were, you know, kind of to your point about like disproportionation, like we don't even, it met my understanding, I don't even know what our baseline is, right? And,
Right,
you
and
know,
does perception match the reality?
exactly,
You know?
Right.
because you also don't want to make judgments on who we think is diverse or who we aren't, you know, like,
Agreed.
so there's a lot to unpack there, but.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why, like, when we went through the tasks, or the, whatever the word is, like, when we went through this last week, we did not prioritize hiring more diverse candidates. As a
goal,
it's such
yeah.
a big
Yes.
elephant type goal, right?
Yes.
And so,
But elephant type goals have to be, like, you have to do that one bite thing, so like, okay, what's one thing we're gonna do this year?
right, but I guess my
Yeah.
point is, like, we kind of got sidetracked
too
because
much,
it
yeah.
popped up here, like, but it wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
something that we picked last week to focus on. Not that I don't think we should focus on it, but like, it was not something that we felt that we could accomplish in this advisory committee.
Great.
Just for the record, guys, this is a priority of mine for sure in this role, and so I have, been collaborating a bit with Stephanie Russo I started reaching out to, teacher training programs that are listed on RIDE's website, from different universities, and so we're starting to hopefully like foster some open lines of communication, about job fairs and things, and get to them early, cause get to candidates early and make sure programs know that we are here and we are hiring as early as possible, because that can help, so.
Can I just ask, which is a little off point, but if we've made progress, how is our retention?
Right.
Because, you know, once you get someone in the door, man, let's keep them. So how are we doing with that? Do candidates stay with us?
So again, this is off the top of my head, so I don't know if that, but I know of two individuals who are still with us, employed by us.
Do you know of anybody that has left us?
I don't. I'm not saying
No,
that,
no,
you
no,
know,
I know, just cause
but-
if we
but
did an
I
exit
don't.
interview, like why and what
We
could
don't
have
do
done
exit
then?
interviews, do we?
I wouldn't say that,
Last I asked,
Yeah.
we didn't,
yeah.
Maybe not all the time, that was a
have we done them? Yes.
but as a practice.
As a practice
Yeah.
for everybody, no.
Right.
We also have to give some grace, the HR position has only existed for 4 years, 5 years, right? No?
Four-ish,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not that long in HR land, you know, like, there's, you know,
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a long time, but
Yeah,
No,
Is that a suggested practice for everybody leaving the district? Is that something
I
that?
mean, in corporate world it is.
Okay.
I don't know about education world.
Because it hasn't been a practice in the education world in my
Yeah.
experience.
I
Doesn't
think my assumption would be the subtext between that question is, are people leaving because they don't feel comfortable or feel like they belong here? Like,
Understood.
that's not, the
Right.
question isn't about exit interviews, the question is about, are we losing diverse candidates because they don't feel comfortable here? So it's trying to figure out, I don't care how we figure that out, but like, I think that's the,
Understood, and I
That-
think,
that
I
is,
think
yeah.
I'd be very interested in having that
Yeah.
conversation with some data to look at, as
Yeah.
opposed to like just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thinking it, yeah.
I have a question on number 69, increasing TA wages.
Mm-hmm.
Do we, is there a standard TA rate?
that's a great question. The TAs, the teacher assistants, are in the ESP union, and we are actually negotiating their contract this year. It's up as well as the bus contractor's contract. I do not believe, and Rob or someone, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe there's a state standard for it. I believe every district sets their own, in negotiations with
Correct.
their unions, so.
I just remember having a conversation a number of years ago with my son had a PT who used to come into the home
Mhm.
and worked in another district and said they were able to recruit pretty good TAs because they have like a tiered system. So depending
We have a
upon
tiered
their,
system.
Yeah.
the response, so we do, so it's not they're all like at one set wage.
Yeah, there's different categories.
Yeah, like this, it's a step, you go a step
Yeah.
one, step two.
No, but even within that, there's different categories for like the ones that do
Different roles
different
within
roles,
those.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that is under,
It's all
that's
under,
being looked at right now by the school committee and the administration in those negotiations.
Do the TAs get benefits or is it just an hourly?
If they're full-time, yeah.
They do,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you to everybody for putting this together, cause I imagine this was a
It
lot
was
of work to
kind
tally
of
it
fun.
all.
It was fun.
Kind of fun, yeah.
It was fun.
We're all pretty easy, you know, so.
What is like vote, number 65, voting?
Mhm.
Was
Well,
that
it's funny,
like,
cause some of.
We had one poster that said, get out and
You have
vote,
to-
basically.
well,
So
you
you
have
have
to
to like
remember
provide
when
more
we did-
cupcakes, like, yes, good.
That's
We
great.
You have to
agree.
remember when we did this, and it was right after, right
It was a
after the
long
bond
day.
passed? Or
okay,
failed, excuse me, like it was
okay,
right, like November, and then we rolled into that spring, so my guess is it had something to do with that.
encouraging
something.
students to vote?
No, my guess,
Yeah.
because there's a couple about like
There's nothing else, just
middle
voting.
school and different things, so that would be my guess.
Okay.
And some things were a little, didn't really neatly fit, and,
Right.
and I'm not trying to, like, I'm not sure that people understood the brief
Mhm.
a little bit.
All the
But
time.
that could not be true, I'm not trying to judge the answer, I'm just saying some did not seem to make a fit, I'll just say that.
Yeah, we just typed out the post-its there. Didn't make sense of everyone's, you know?
Yeah.
All right, does anybody have any, more questions or comments on this one?
Just that I really do hope that we do what Aaron said and start thinking about disseminating. I would appreciate it as a staff person, knowing that those post-it notes meant something, which is why I did in fact say, where are they? You know, so I would appreciate knowing it, and yes, and so if sometime we could circle back to that, I would be very happy about that.
Yeah, I think we had talked about it in the context of when we start to think about this March's PD day,
Mhm.
responding to this
Mm.
in some way, making a plan
Mhm.
in March that does reflect some of the desires that were on the post-its.
That's very cool.
So again, and I think Jen, I know you're, I told Jen I would help you the adult today because of her migraine. I think thinking about this too, with the advisory capacity is what I, from the school committee perspective, what does this group want to recommend to the school committee to allocate resources or like needs, you know, like, cause that's, or policies, you know, that's where the school committee lands, right? And so the administration has a lot of specific tasks, but this is a subcommittee of the school committee, or advisory committee of that. So what advice does this group have about these sticky notes that we want to officially tell, like, obviously Jen and I are here, but like, you have power to officially tell the school committee, hey, this group feels, based on this, X. So that's where I think you need to think about it, because Sally's great, but Sally is like only a person, right? And so the school committee needs to know kind of where, as we go into budget cycle, as we go into policies, as we're thinking about positions, like what we would like the different, all the different advisory groups can give some recommendations towards things like that, so.
But as an example, that March PD came about because this advisory committee made a recommendation to the school committee that,
One of the PDs was,
was equity focused.
and then the school committee, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, voted that they mandated it, I believe.
We did, we
Yeah.
mandated that there be funds allocated in the budget for
For
that PD. So that's how that PD came to be. It came out of this.
And great collaboration with the administration.
Yes, yeah.
They were not like resistant
No,
towards
no,
it,
no,
it sounds
but
like.
I'm saying, like, that's how it came.
But that's how we formalized it,
Yeah.
for lack of a better word.
So then is that one thing that we actually do wanna decide on right now, is that we would recommend to the school committee that we continue this work and allocate additional funds for professional development in March.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to
Well,
recommend
that
again?
already exists, right?
It exists
Money
like
for
in
PD.
perpetuity.
No, but to earmark it for
DEI.
work around DEI. Some monies,
And I was reviewing the, comments around professional development, and I just wanna remind people that like professional development, I think we talked about this last month too, doesn't have to be just PD days, right? It can be during whatever else you all call it when you sit in a room together, right? Or like, you know, available through online forums or like, you know, training things, like it doesn't have to be the big collaboration.
Mhm.
And like I think we just saw here, like not necessarily big groups, it could be small group trainings too. So, you know, we can be creative in how it's approached.
I can say this, there's gonna be an equity focus at March's PD Day.
So it's already kinda
It's already
done,
in. It's
so
already
we don't
out.
have to
Yeah.
recommend it
And by equity
because
you
it's
mean-
done.
By equity, like what kind of equity? Racial equity, economic equity, educational equity?
All of the above. We're still working on it. I mean, it's still like, we're still kind of in process with how it's shaping up. You know, Sally and I had a meeting with Kayan in which we spoke to her and talked about some of the directions we can follow. We're also gonna use this
Great.
data here
Great.
to kind of inform it. So like, you know, it still is taking shape. But it will be
Okay.
part of the day.
Yeah, I would trust her with the next step, certainly, like if you guys are already in communication
Mm-hmm.
with her, because she led the PD, and I'm sure she also has thoughts and opinions on how it went.
Mm-hmm.
And then if she was given this data as well, say, hey, you asked for these post-its, here are the post-its, here's the data, I would trust her with the next step,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is.
Is it all schools too, or is this just middle high school?
All schools.
Okay.
One thing I think that is surprising to me about K-12 education versus where I am in higher education, is like how hard it is for like item 3, 4, and 5 about like small group discussions and those sort of things to occur because of teaching schedules and all of those sort of things, and also that any PD union contract-wise is tied to money, in theory, right? And so I do think that that's something that as a district we need to think about, is like, how do we get beyond that? Like, how do we get teachers to be able to be out of the classroom so they can have these conversations, or how do we incentive, you know, like that is something that in 2 years I haven't been able to wrap my head around, because the one days are great,
Mm-hmm.
but like what I'm hearing from them and what I'm seeing on this data is like, we want to get together with our peers and have conversations about race. Like we want to get together and have small group, grade level work on this. Like, and that I think is something that we need to try to figure out, like
Mhm.
what would the school committee need to do to make that be able to happen?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I'd be curious about.
I'm wondering if like, because we were talking the other day about how often we find ourselves kind of preaching to the choir of like, the people who show up to do this work are the people who care about this work, and they're often not the people who need to show up to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if like, part of this is incorporating like training, so there was like a liaison in each building who had some sort of like training around this where they could lead like a faculty meeting, for example, about this, because there's like one person at DMS, one person at Quid, who could like, just to take it down even like one more granular level. Does that make sense
I
at all?
really like that idea, because you guys know that I have shared with you that I do not feel that this is my area of expertise and that I am a learner. And to have somebody that could be a partner in learning, that I know has had some training and would be, you know, a good partner in learning, I would love that, and I would seek that person out. I know I would, so that is something to think about.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these weird little things that come up and you're like, oh, how do I do this? What is the best way to handle this? And just to have somebody that I know would be a good partner in problem solving and learning, I would utilize that. Would you?
Yeah, and it's almost like, you know, like safe zone training, right? Where it's like you train yourself how to be like a safe place for LGBTQ, et cetera, issues, like something similar for this DEI work. I don't know.
Well, I don't know what everybody else thinks, but just as a staff person, that resonates with me.
Yeah.
So when it comes to professional learning, one thing I've always tried to think when it comes to any topic where professional learning is that usually it's most effective when we're really clear about and intentional about what our purpose is and what we're looking as outcomes. And I think we've had experience with this group of that happening. I think we were really clear and focused on goals, right? We talked about goals around student voice, and I think we've made some really good steps with incorporating more student voice into various things. We had goals around the equity vision statement. I think we made obviously a great progress in crafting that. So when it comes to professional learning, I think that this can be a good basis for us to talk about, okay, and Jacqueline alluded to this, equity focus in professional learning can mean a lot of things. So do we want to have conversations around narrowing that focus and saying, what do we really feel? What are we hearing from our staff? What are we hearing coming from various sources of data and information that we get about how that professional learning should be focused? Meaning, what are we looking to really show growth in, or show improvement in, or expand knowledge in, or all the above? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I would say that based on what I've observed and read in the equity audit and in some of the other different things, like it's race-based equity. Like the challenge
Okay,
in this
so-
district seems to be that what I've heard from most of the data is that there's a challenge and a gap in how to handle race issues, topics, etc. in the classroom, outside the classroom, etc.
Okay. That can mean a lot of things though, race-based equity.
Well,
Racism. I'll use that. I'll say
Okay.
that.
and
one
I will
then.
even go like one step more specific because I read that amazing book called Anti-Blackness in School, and I think that they make a really strong case that like even within the umbrella of racism, like anti-blackness is like the most important, the most urgent need in the United States, and I would second that.
Okay.
And I think that we like to explicitly name like anti-blackness as like the issue that we're trying to understand and grapple with in our district is, I would say, the most urgent need from my experience.
And like you said, to explicitly name it, right, and not just call it nicely equity, right, like.
Or even to call it racism, because racism is
Racism.
big,
Yeah, it is,
honestly.
yeah, and that's half of the problem.
Okay, so what are we thinking in terms of bringing forward knowledge, bringing forward growth in this area? Meaning, what are we putting in place in terms of purpose and like, you know, metrics of improvement in terms of where we are versus where we want to be?
So, the only thing that I'm thinking of having taken it, and you guys will be more conversant than with me, but that measure on one of our Department of Education surveys is how comfortable, how often do you are with having conversations about race in your classroom or your job, or whatever that particular question is. Do people say they're comfortable with that?
No, like if you look at the survey works data,
Yeah,
like
no.
the numbers
Yeah,
down here, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, there could be a very easy thing that we already have that we could look for some growth in. Is it too big though, that it will take too long to see the growth because it will be spread out against too many people? I don't know.
I mean, I think it's worth taking a stab at. I mean, so I'm just
I-
Googling, but
Yeah, I think the implicit associative test and the implicit bias test that's put out by Harvard and is free online is a good one for teachers to go through, and it takes very little time. But I think it is important that we start with the vision and have some of the more specific work maybe follow from that. I think it would be important for us to share as a district, like we have a vision of a school where all students belong, and that overarching kind of goal, which could then hopefully trickle down into the school improvement plans, and from there, we could have some very specific, professional development around implicit bias and some of those, finer points, because I just think it's possible that teachers will react, a bit negatively to just being asked, like, you must do this, out of context, and I don't know, but you guys are the experts when it comes to North Kingstown, so I wanna hear your thoughts about that.
And I'm gonna preface all this with I have a migraine and I'm cranky. Like 2 years after the equity audit, we're still dancing around the fact that we've been told that our teachers need professional development and anti-racism and microaggressions and implicit bias, and we're still unwilling to name that. And that's where I'm gonna leave on the table.
And the good news is this group
How are you
worked.
unwilling to name
I'm
it?
the optimist of the good news is we did do that. This group worked really hard on the equity vision statement. So that is like when you're thinking about that top
nice,
down, like we have that really high level vision now.
I think
So I think
we
we're-
nailed it.
I think we're ready for that, what that next step looks like, right? And in my world, like, it goes from vision to goals, right? And so that's where I think I missed the last meeting. I don't even know why. There was something very important that I couldn't have. And so that's where, like, I made that, there was that document that you all looked at, and that's where I think figuring out, like, what are some of those goals, but then also, like, having Rob or someone keep an eye on, like, where it's aligning with the district's goals too, and, like, trying to figure out where those are friends, because they are. Like, we approved last night the district strategic goals. And so I think it's just figuring out, like, what that next level is really important.
And I do want to name that the authors of Anti-Blackness in School, at least one of them I think is at Roger Williams.
Roger Williams, yeah.
So, like, again, local, someone who, like, in the book they reference Rhode Island a lot, and, like, really Rhode Island specific examples, which I found to be, like, highly relevant, right? And potentially even Dr. Murray Johnson knows of this book and knows of these people just from being in higher ed.
They actually gave, the author of the book, the one who's here, gave a talk at NERI.
At NERI, right, yeah.
Black History.
So, you know, like, if NERI
Professional
was willing to,
Development.
like, offer that professional development again, maybe offer it here, if she was willing to come and talk here. It was a really astonishing read, and I would recommend it. And we have a local expert, so, you know, it might be worth just tapping into that.
Yeah,
Even
is that
offering
something-
the book out to anybody who wanted to read it would be.
I've secretly wanted to give teachers homework for my whole life,
Yeah.
but can it be like, read this book before March?
Like, my perfect world would be, like, everyone's required to read this book, which I know is not realistic for, like, life.
As unrequired as required can be.
Like, read the book. Which I know is not realistic, but as close as we could get to, like, protected time for teachers to read this book, that's what I would advocate for.
I think that would also help with like just naturally like the smaller conversations about
Right.
it, cause if a teacher across the hall is reading the same book as you, you're gonna have conversations about it.
Right.
And I read this book, not to slightly get off topic, I read this book called How to Raise Kids Who Aren't Assholes, and it's great. And
How's it going? Just okay?
she's 6.
Mine too, yeah.
Jury's out.
Yeah, right.
But one of the things that they mentioned is like we talk about gender all day long, and it's like, oh, who sits next to you? Is it a boy or a girl? And it's not like, and we like can't talk about race. It's like Mohammed sits next to me, his skin's darker than me. Shh. Like, oh my god.
Totally.
Like,
right.
so it's like just the two extremes of everything. Like just being able to just like put any sort of fire under like. Just start the conversations, we'll like help you get to like
Yeah.
where we need to be, but
Yeah. Yep.
Our 2 juniors. This is like deep,
You should read
you
Can I
know,
require they read it? Homework. You need to read this book.
and tell me what I need to do, cause I'd appreciate it. No, seriously though, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I don't want you to be left out as you're listening. Any thoughts occurring?
What do you got, Victoria William? That's the question. No, okay, you can ponder it for a second and then let us
Yeah,
know.
good point.
So Jen, what do you think as far as, like, we have there's other things you wanna get to, right? So as far as the sticky notes, what would we think as a group would be the next step
So
that we would like to see?
I guess without a plan for the and, we're kind of holding on those for now.
Yeah, I think, like, the sticky notes tell us, like, a mandate of the people, we should continue this work.
Yep.
They didn't say, like, this is dumb or we don't like this, right? In general, there was a thirst for more DEI stuff, so I think we should continue to, like, follow the voice to Opta Holland, because I've watched Frozen so many times recently. We need to, like, right, you know, we should just keep doing this work.
But I would say if this group wants to see a specific type of, some type of training,
I do,
they should
yeah.
make the recommendation to the school committee. And they should do it in this meeting, because it's November, right? And then that way it'll go out into the school committee in December.
Yeah.
We could probably do it at the December meeting, but it could probably be done in the December meeting, but just to think about that, just a recommendation to the school committee of what they would like to see. That way it can be had for discussion from the school committee to decide, you know, what they wanna do with that.
So START was redistricting to improve the diversity in all schools. So we know that last night, the school committee, was that last night? It was last night. The school committee approved the membership for the committee that we have on redistricting, transportation, and start times, right? So that's something that we're actively working on. And so something that either the school committee members or the administration can do is make sure that those conversations, like, incorporate the concept of not just moving the students around to have number diversity, but thinking about that intentionality about diversity, like what we're doing as far as racial diversity, et cetera, in all the schools, right? Because I think that was really clearly defined. So that's great news, because we knew that, and we are already on the progress for that. And so I think it's just keeping those conversations centered, or making sure that that doesn't get lost in that advisory committee. So that's good news, because we would be able to report back to the teachers that is in progress, and ways that they can give, like, who's chairing that, how they could give voice to it, et cetera. For the other three, for the starts, like, that is, it seems to be a little bit of where, do any of those align, I guess, to what you all talked about at the last meeting?
Well, I think incorporating the student voice, we talked about that a lot last meeting and took some action items on that. And that's including more voices listening to all.
I wonder, I saw guest speakers in here a couple times as well. I wonder if we could get the gentleman from Roger Williams.
Lady. She's a lady.
It's actually a she,
It's a
yeah.
human, yeah. Girl human, yeah.
It's okay, it's your implicit bias who did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the patriarchy.
Oops, sorry. Just because I saw a guest speaker, and I feel like that connects to listening to all and having
No.
more voices heard.
That's cute, but no.
Okay.
I'm just saying that's a little stretch. Like, I feel like we need a little bit more tangibles. Like, that's good, right? Like, it's,
So listening to more voices actually ties into the next part of the agenda item, which was like to kind of thing that William had talked about, like, is reaching out to the students to, so here we heard from the staff and what they think is important, and then the next part is like to hear from students. William, you wanna talk about that?
Good idea.
we'll give it to William.
So
Then we'll come back.
Victoria and I had made we made one document because the document that I did you create the document with where we all wrote questions?
I
think?
did, yeah.
Yeah, so at the bottom of it, it was the survey works thing, like the panorama thing. I couldn't get into that, so we just ended up creating our own separate thing. But anyways, yeah, we went over some
Good for
questions.
you, a good initiative.
Good initiative.
Wait, so is there something we should?
Can you forward this out?
Yeah,
William?
yeah.
Thank you, honeys.
And so, yeah, we just kind of put in questions. We gave our own feedback. We want to go to the student union.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Jen, sorry, I wasn't here. What were they
We had talked about,
Oh, sorry.
It's okay, it's just me.
talking about reaching out to the student body to get their feedback on things that they have seen, heard, experienced, like to give an idea of what types of things they feel, not so much from like a PD standpoint, but like what types of things are being experienced by the students that might give an idea of where some improvement is, not improvement, like what types of things are being experienced by students that where they think there might be some things that would be helpful to be taught about. Am I articulating that correctly?
Yeah, we're also trying to kind of like figure out, like what do they think the solution would be to
Yes,
certain
yeah.
issues. So,
Do you wanna share that? Who's up on the screen right now?
Is this?
I just
your-
sent it with the email, we just made like a different like little like chart thing.
Do you wanna email that to whoever's screen?
I think it's
I think,
Sally
yeah, I
to
think
like
it's
the main
I
email.
love how
Yeah.
you divided yourselves up into blue and yellow.
Oh, here it is. Whose screen
So we
is, oh,
started
okay.
writing, yeah, like a few
This is
comments.
so good, you guys.
Oh, look at that, okay.
And we were just thinking like, you know, we'd continue with, there were a few other questions added, that we didn't quite get to write much about. And then, you know, by the next meeting, meet with the student union, maybe meet with, Saga as well, and maybe a few other clubs that are just a bunch of different students, so we can get the voices from, you know, students from all over the building, so that we can like hear what they think about how they could answer those kinds of questions, and kind of just like the overall opinion on the students' perspective of using, surveys to get their voices heard.
And we also like the idea of like having them come up with their own questions, based on things that they've experienced, because like I wouldn't have the same experiences and come up with the same question as somebody who's from a different background. So, we were thinking of like getting different questions from them, from like, the student union and soccer and stuff like that.
That's great.
Do we have like a goal of how many questions we want it to be, so they don't scroll for 5 pages and just go, no? Cause I know I wrote a lot. I'm talking to myself, but.
Well, and I know that Rob, you sent an email because you had questions about like what the next steps were, right, in this process, so do we know what the next steps are in this process?
Well, I thought the original plan was to put it into a survey.
Totally, and like you weren't here for that meeting, so I know you
Yeah.
wanted to like kind of speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanna read through them real quick, 'cause I haven't seen them yet. Yeah, so, I mean, I think that anytime we survey students, it's something that we have to go through a process, you know what I mean? So we have to make sure we're going through the, a process. Are we talking about surveying all the students?
I thought that was planned.
Like they have the option to do it, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
High school students.
All the students in high school or more than high school?
High school, I think was what we were talking
Yeah,
about, right?
that's what
Yeah,
it
high
was
school.
intended for.
Okay.
And part of it, Rob, too, is that our student voices here shared some pretty, I thought, important stories about things that would be considered inequity, racism, and like how to capture that without it being personalized to one teacher or to one student, but how do we, so in other words, there are issues that relate to this work that were brought to this table, and we wanna figure out how we can capture that.
Yeah. So,
Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so again, my only question when it comes to surveys is what information are we looking to gain from the survey? Like, what are we specifically looking, and how do we envision using that information?
So the goal of the survey was to get back like what specific, like kind of like the main issues that students are experiencing at the high school, and like we're getting their ideas of like what the solution would be from them, and then we could use those ideas to like kind of create our own solutions.
Okay, so like main issue, things that kids are experiencing, and you're talking
Yeah.
about in the areas of discrimination, potentially, you're talking about in the areas of feeling of belonging, inclusion, et cetera,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I think it's great, and then we envision using it in a way where we are gonna take that information, we're gonna look at it, we're gonna sift through it, and we're gonna look at how that can help inform future steps we wanna take for addressing some of the,
Yeah.
anticipated problems that come through in that information. Yeah.
Kind of an analogous process to what we did with the teachers.
Yeah.
Everybody had an opportunity to
Right.
say something.
Right,
And so now we're giving all our high school students an opportunity to say something.
Okay.
Some may not take it, and that's okay, and some may not have anything that they feel that they wanna add,
so
but-
it's a student-facing survey, right? So we're asking
Yeah.
for the students, right, to provide information from their perspective about their experience.
Right.
Okay.
Also
So,
thinking,
yep.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
In a way, like, it might be good if we could somehow do something where we could get discussions going and then also do a survey or something like that. Because I feel like a lot of students, when they get a survey, like emailed to them or something, they don't feel like it's really doing anything. And they also don't have a clear idea of like what they can really share. But like, I know like when I do like in-class discussions and things where students are given the opportunity to kind of like listen to others' ideas and thoughts and then kind of formulate their own, that it becomes a lot more clear, and I don't know, like it becomes easier to share different things, especially relating to these kinds of things.
I think too, when you get a survey, or at least for me, not to project, but I don't always have examples off the top of my head on like oh yes, I was thinking about microaggressions today, that's perfect. Whereas if somebody was like, oh, this happened, it will like you were saying, like prompt something like, oh yeah, something similar happened, and like continue the conversation.
So when we did the, gosh, what did we call
The
it?
equity vision student.
No, I'm talking about my other job. My real
Because
job.
remember we got some really great feedback from the students when we asked for their input on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking about when we did culture survey at URI, the next step that we did after that was focus groups. And so we said, and kind of to Will's point, like we said, or William's point, sorry, we said, hey, you told us this, and let's talk about solutions. Like, let's talk about what success would look like. And we did some like guided conversations like about that part of it because we knew the problems. Like, and I feel like here we know a lot of the problems. It's more like, okay, how do we move forward? And students are so smart. Like, they often know the answers, like, before we know the answers. And so that's what we did when we did a similar survey to that. Not that it's a right or wrong answer, but that's how we got to hear a little bit more from them in that not survey-y way.
The one thing, sorry. The one thing I like about this is that with the equity audit, there was a limited amount of students who participated in the focus groups, and like this survey would go out to everybody. Like, so it's a bigger group of people who would be giving information, or whether they choose to or not, at least like, and we heard from people afterwards, like, oh, I didn't even know that focus group opportunity was, like, from students, like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't know that focus group opportunity.
I forgot you
was
didn't do a
available.
survey. See,
Yeah.
we did a survey.
Yeah, we didn't
So,
do a
yeah.
survey, yeah.
No.
And I'm just thinking with my administrative hat right now, okay? I'm just a little concerned because I like the focus group idea better, only because we're sending out survey to 1,350 students at high school, and we have to swift through these responses. And I'm just concerned because when we, at the high school level, we get a lot of complaints or something happened, and we drop everything, and we spend hours on making sure that we are investigating everything with fidelity. And that's from the littlest thing to something that we think could be really dire. And I'm very worried about what someone can say, anonymously or otherwise, and lack of information or information in a survey with that volume of information coming to us, and us responding to it, and maybe not responding to it within the timeline because we are 5 administrators, and where this can really where this can go. I feel more comfortable thinking about a focus group, perhaps with more good advertising and time given, where we can facilitate that in a safe space where we can take information in a more organized way, where we can manage the information that comes to us. That's just my thought.
I kind of agree, and I kind of feel like a focus group is probably gonna be a setting that's more conducive to the type of discussion that we're talking about.
What I
Right.
heard Jen say that, Rob, because it's my fault, because I brought it up, that we already did that. So that's the problem.
I didn't hear her
is
say that.
The equity audit, they
Yeah.
did focus.
She
Did
said
you-
very few students participated though.
But we,
Yeah, but-
we did them. And I just wanna,
Yeah.
two simultaneous thoughts. I hear you, Shivali, right? And I wonder if there is a way to put it out, because we're not asking people to report complaints, okay? We're asking people to provide feedback on things that they have heard, which I understand that's a fine line, right? And so I think there's probably a way, but you don't wanna get 1,300 responses saying, like, I was the victim of, ABC, like, that's an administrative nightmare. But I think my concern also is, I wonder if, I think there was twofold with the focus groups, right? Like, people said they didn't hear, and people didn't participate because do they not feel comfortable having those conversations? And I don't want people to not provide information because they don't want to sit down and say, hey, Shivali, your teacher said ABC, right? So how do we find the medium?
Is there a way to make this survey, not multiple choice, but do you know what microaggressions are? Absolutely. definitely not. Like somewhere it's where it's like you click buttons and then maybe at the end, like, is there something you wish we asked you about, and like one space for comments, so you're not getting, first of all, 27,000 comments to read to, a bunch of things to report or like investigate, and then, like to your point, also have the focus groups just to kind of start the conversation, like a shorter survey with options to click on.
So you're talking kind of about like a mix of both, where it's like they're like smaller focus groups and like surveys
Yeah,
with
cause
like
I think
multiple
the
choice.
conversation is important too, to like get people, like, once the first person says like, oh yeah, no, that definitely happens in Rhode Island, then the next person can feed off of it and talk about just things they've experienced in general, rather than, like you were saying, like, Mr. Whoever did this to student whoever, and then you have a crisis. But also to get like the data feedback from the survey of like, most students are saying they have no idea what a microaggression is, or most students are saying they have no idea what the difference between ethnicity and race, or whatever.
I just know that our students feel more comfortable with staff members, you know, our school psychologists. I mean, there's a lot of information. They feel comfortable, and they know that information is going to be processed in a reasonable way. And so I know that we did the focus groups during the audit, but they were like people the kids didn't know. They were strangers, and that, I'm sure that affected that, but you know, something where our staff members who are skilled to have these conversations, and we advertise it and create a safe space where the discussions can be had. And I wonder if that would give us like good, rich information that can be processed in a more healthy way.
Something, Jen, like that I keep going on in my head is 2 years ago, and since then, we were told about a lot of things, right? And so I feel like we are beyond the problem seeking portion, and we need to move. Like, they've already told us, like,
I know, I
we gotta move forward,
I
we gotta
agree.
go to the problem solving.
I'm
And
trying
so
to-
I'm on team, let's ask students what suggestions they have. Like,
I'm
cause
with
I
you.
feel like they're gonna tell us the same stuff they told us 2 years ago, and like, we know.
So you wanna
like,
ask solutions?
yeah, I want student voice on what we can do to make things better.
Okay, so how do you wanna do that?
I don't know, whatever Shivali says we're allowed to do. No, I'm not joking, like, you know, like, or what the students think is
Well,
best, but
that's
like,
what
I feel,
this is
but
what
these
we're-
questions are not aligned with solution, like it's going backwards in my head, like,
Okay.
and not in a bad way, they're so good, whoever wrote them, I don't know, they're really good, but
Okay.
like, I like the concept of like, baseline of like what they know, don't know, because that would inform PD, right? Like, do you know what a microaggression is? Yes, no. Do you know, et cetera. Like, that's different than what are the problems, or it's like, hey, like, we've, in the equity audit, this was defined as some challenges in our schools. What ideas do students have to solve X?
I think the issue is, I think not the issue,
Yeah.
the point is to reach out to students for their feedback
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form. So however that is, I think. we
Because
need
this
to
goes
do that.
along with the student voice, the voice one,
100%,
right?
yeah.
I think to the voice point too, if, I don't know if it's possible or what barriers are, but if we like take down the fourth wall and are like, the teachers think like, just in general, like this slideshow, we need to do this, and then the students think this, then it's like, oh, we both think this, and it's like, not like, we have to talk about microaggressions, we also need to talk about microaggressions, and like just this weird, like, you can't talk about it, but everybody knows it. So like sharing with the teachers, the kids' feedback and vice versa.
I would also wanna make sure that we all have a shared understanding and clarity about what microaggressions are.
Well, that would require actually talking about microaggressions,
Yeah.
which so far we haven't done, so. You know, what we did when we sent out the equity vision statement, like, after we drafted it, we sent out something that said, like, after you've read this, what constructive feedback can you offer that would help? Like, so, I do think, like William and Victoria are right, like, we need to ask the students and we ask the staff. Maybe it's the same type of thing, like, what do you wanna see us start doing? What do you wanna see us continue doing? What do you wanna see us stop doing? Like, even just something like that in this area, but I don't think that we can, like, move forward without some type of feedback from them.
And that's what I like the vision equity, like the statement when we did the survey for that. I felt like we got so much good feedback from that, and they weren't even like directed questions like this. So I feel like we
Yeah, we
could
got like
even-
subliminal information.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like you could get even better information now and then use it more for our benefit.
If there is a way to include, students who are verbally challenged, either they're nonverbal or have really special ed needs, they might use a communication device. I don't know how this would be done, but I think that would help, in terms of the accessibility and belonging part of our goals. Speaking as a parent who used to fill out the panorama survey that was sent out through RIDE, I remember my feedback was these questions really do not, a lot of these questions don't pertain to my child, or I can't answer, like how, you know, what is the, does your child feel safe at school? And I think those, but that's more of a RIDE survey issue. But some way that those students could be included, and I think in for that particular category, there may also need to be reaching out to parents who can speak on behalf of their children. Not every child who has an IEP or a 504, but to make sure that their voice is heard as well.
Maybe going back to the survey works questions, right? Like, is there something that was in the survey works questions that we could say, like, what would you like to see us start doing in these areas? What would you like to see us continue? What would you like to see us stop? That way it keeps it focused on things that have already been asked. And then, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? And then that gives the opportunity for people to provide, like, you know, open-ended, any just some open-ended.
Yeah, I noticed one of the questions students responded not favorably to was, I'm excited about whatever I'm working on in class. So the question then is, what task or project would excite you? And then, like you say, I think it's so important to always ask, is there anything else you want to tell us or ask us at the end?
So I just pulled it up here. So if we're looking at the 6 to 12 students, if that's the focus of like what we want in terms of feedback, the school belonging area. So under that, the questions they were asked were, how much respect do students in your school show each other? In which 26% responded favorably. How well
So
do
74%
Not
responded
favorably.
not favorably, so they
that
said
was
there's-
actually up 3 points from the year before too.
It's really bad, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just clarifying. Like I just had to do that flip in my head quick.
Yeah.
25% bad. Got it.
Right. How well do people at your school understand you as a person? 29% favorable. I want to couch this by saying also that one thing about the survey that people often don't know, but is I think important to know, is that so if students respond neutral to something,
It's unfavorable.
that's unfavorable. A lot of students hit neutral on things, and
Yeah.
and so it again,
It makes me a little crazy sometimes.
yeah,
fair.
it's just a part of the survey.
So you have to do a better job to just be okay, kinda. Do you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. How connected do you feel to the adults at your school? You had 22% favorable. How much do you matter to others at the school? You had 32% favorable. And overall, how much do you feel like you belong at your school? We had 42% favorable. So we could base some of our questions, I think, off that a little bit, right?
And some of those are in there, I think.
I know I
because
sound like a
learning-
broken record, but belonging is swell, but this is a racism issue, right?
Mhm.
So that's not gonna cover what we're talking about here.
Okay. I thought that was what you mentioned though with the survey works.
Well, I was more pointing to what Susan said about like with the staff and faculty, where like, how comfortable are you having conversations about race with your students? Like, how often those were the questions I was referring to. I wasn't sure if there were similar questions on the student side, like, cause that's what we're trying, like, that was what the PD was focused on.
Okay, so I can look that up
Yeah, I
for
think-
teachers, for the teachers.
Okay.
Give me the look, Erin, I
I
know.
know, I just wanna like move us forward and I'm going
So
to do
for
it.
the
Okay,
teacher one,
go back to my pretty document that I made.
These
Go
were
back.
from your pretty
No,
document.
it's not.
These
You were
were
not
from
doing my
copy.
pretty document.
They
I
were
will
from
show
the pretty
you.
document, I promise you.
No, it said, and I quote, the goal is increase opportunities for student voice in areas valued by students, right? No. So then I told you, and again, not that I'm right, but I was trying to move you forward, and something got lost.
This is why you can't miss meetings.
I know. It's okay. No, it's not that I'm right, but like, so for example, like under the 24-25 goals, it's on the, I don't know, you don't have it. I'm trying to think of an easy way to give it to you all. No, this was 2 meetings ago, that's the problem, but I'll reply to the one that Victoria just sent. And again, the problem that I always find on with groups like this is like, there's just too much, right? So we have to pick something.
Yeah.
Like, and we just have to pick something. And even if it's not the most important thing or the best thing, like we have to pick something and do something. Because we will get stuck in this perpetuation of like trying to figure out the biggest or best thing to do, and it doesn't exist. And so
So we
where can I
picked
find
the
this email?
mandatory professional development for administrators and teachers as well as learning sessions.
Can you
for
send it to
students.
everybody, Jen? Because I can't get there. Hold on, no, yes I can.
We picked row 17.
Wait. Okay, so that was the document. So row 17 for what?
24 and 25 goals.
24, 25 goals.
No, but that's not the student voice one.
Well, that's what we're talking about right now. That's the one that we picked last week, was row 17, mandatory professional development for administrators and teachers
Yeah.
as well as, and then in column C, right now we're on row 18, column C.
Conduct an audit. Yeah, we did that.
And then within 3 months of the start of the school year, create and distribute a
Yeah.
survey to gather feedback and data on these experiences, and that's what we're debating right now, including question about what additional training opportunities they would like to see.
Yeah, but that's for the staff.
No, it's for the students. Within 3 months of the start of the school year,
This
create
is
and
about the sticky note thing.
No, it's not. The sticky note was the one up above.
Conduct an audit of the 23-24 professional development activities attended by, okay, so what I meant by this, and again, no worries, but so you're on line 17?
No, I'm on line 18.
Okay,
I
on
don't know
T,
where
yep.
you are right now, I'm sorry.
Alright, I just sent the
Yeah.
doc again. This was that doc,
It's probably
the gold
The one
doc.
that was just emailed to us?
Yeah,
Okay, which tab are we on?
we're on tab 3, which is 24-25 goals.
Okay.
So on line 18, it said, conduct an audit of 23-24 professional development activities attended by administrators, teachers, and students. What I had meant by that was, what did people in the district go to last year that would quantify as equity PD?
Yep.
On their own, right? Like maybe for their certifications,
Yep.
maybe for whatever, so you get a list, figure out what people went to. And then the second part of that was, within 3 months of the start of the school year, create and distribute a survey to gather feedback and data on these experiences and include questions about what additional trainings they would like to see. So what I had meant by that was, you email the teachers and you say, hey, what did you learn at those things that you find to be useful? And what additional things would you like to learn? So that's what I had meant by that one. Not that it's right or wrong, but that's what I had meant when I wrote it.
Well, we morphed that.
You went a different way,
We
yeah.
went a
And that's
different
okay.
way, Yeah, I did ask for the list of
Yeah.
training, but we were talking about.
You would have to
surveys.
ask, I was thinking like we'd have to almost ask them, because like unless Stephanie could pull it out of the, wherever they put in their
Yeah.
things to get credit for, like there might be things that they went to or did that
Nobody knows.
that they
about.
don't know about. So like, hey, what did you go to, what did you learn last year that's kind of what I meant. And again, what you're doing is fine, but I just feel like we know what the problems are, so we just need to, like, going back up to that student voice one, like we just need to pick.
Okay. Well, we didn't
something.
pick student voice. We
That's fine,
picked-
that's fine. Okay, we'll go back to the mandatory PD one then. So we reviewed the follow-up notes, which is great, right? And then we prepared a
So go to
comprehensive synopsis, which is great.
Yeah, and so what we decided to do
Got
was to ask the students like what they had been experienced, what their experiences were. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. I think you already know. I think we just need to
I agree with you.
move forward. Will, what would you do? What should we do?
Or
How do we stop it?
Victoria.
Rules like I told you, we
Victoria.
didn't like the questions.
No, and we can ask those questions, but we know they're gonna say yes, there's microaggressions, and then they're gonna give us a whole list, and then Shivali's gonna spin around and have to solve all, it's, so,
But you know what, look at some of the other ones, what would help you feel comfortable addressing this? Like that might be a safe space, that might be an
Yeah.
identified
That's
person
right.
that you could go to. So there are questions in there that they're,
I like the solution
but
concept,
there
yeah.
are questions in there right now that lead to solutions. So if we just went through the list, we could
Yeah.
probably pick some of those out right now. Go,
Yeah.
William, do you have
No, who has
anything
the
that you
scrolling?
could go?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I forgot that.
But that, so I think that's like, if we were gonna send out something or do something, like, I think that would be the most productive thing, because they'll tell you, like, oh, I really
Yes.
wish we
Like
had this.
exclusively solution-based questions.
Yeah, my friend at blah 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 school has this, that'd be really cool if we had that here. Hey, so and so had this cool
Yeah.
club, that'd be really neat. Oh, I wish I was able to do XYZ. You know, like, I feel like that would help us at least, like, move one step closer to being able to do something versus, like, we have the data of the problems.
So
like,
do you
whatever.
think you and Victoria can come up with, like you just said, exclusively
Like solution-based.
solution-based
Okay.
questions?
But
Yeah.
you
You have them.
already have
Yeah.
some of those
Yeah.
questions in here,
Yeah.
Or,
right?
okay, yep, or narrow them down to that, or,
Mhm.
yeah.
I also find sometimes with students, we have a lot of success with micro surveys and not to pun off microaggressions, but so what we literally do is we'll say a microaggression is X, right? We'll define it. And then we'll say, like,
This one.
yeah,
Will
like,
help you feel
like,
comfortable addressing this.
but not even that, like, what would you, like, what do you think would help, like, this in North Kingstown? Like, you know, you don't even ask, like, is this happening? We know it's happening. They told us a bunch of microaggressions when we read through the data. So it's more like, what would be helpful in helping address XYZ? You know, like, you just do a one survey question. Like, not 10, you just ask one question, and then they give you information about it. So that could be another choice if you're thinking about trying to get back stuff.
Yeah, and that way we're not sorting through like, what,
You do one at a
1,350
time.
kids.
Times
Yeah.
8?
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess, Rob, for you
So I
and the
guess what's the
administrators,
most
like,
important question that we wanna know from the students?
and again, you could do more than one question. I was just giving an example of something that we do sometimes if we're really trying to get some depth instead of breadth. Which ones do you like?
Me personally, I feel like race is a big issue, but I don't like. We still need to go to the student union and saga and see like what their thoughts are and like what the most important issue is. And I think
Okay.
we're planning to do that before the next meeting.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
You wanna talk to them and then come back
Yeah.
with your, su- suggested solution-based questions?
Yeah.
Perfect.
And you know, this kind of work is important and it just happens when a group, and especially because there's a lot of new members, and so we're all at different places where we are with this, so sorry in terms of like, you guys just did a bunch of work, and a lot of it is not going to be moving forward, but the pieces that are moving forward are what we need.
Yes.
So, and that is just part of life. You know, for want of a better word, you do a lot of work and some of it's good and some of it you have to, another time, another day. So to go forward with really, well, I'm gonna just ask, we're all in agreement with that we have plenty enough data to say there are problems in North Kingston around race, blackness. I also think, by the way, guys, I'm just throwing in there, gender.
Yeah.
You know, and so we all know that we have enough data to know we have problems. So, you know, now we want to move forward to asking questions about what do you think would help make this better? Are we all in agreement on that?
Yes.
All right. So you kind of have a new, more tight charge as you go forward to talk to the other students.
Yeah.
Do you think they'll agree with that there's a problem?
Yeah.
Definitely,
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, so then we're
They
good.
told us multiple ways, multiple times.
Yeah,
Like, that's the
good
part.
then.
Yeah.
Thank you both for advocating for this and for like being the voice pushing this through. I know it's not easy and I appreciate you getting the input from everybody else.
Thanks, guys.
And for listening to me being cranky today, I'm sorry.
Cranky's a lot.
Anything else we need to go over? Okay. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Now go do your homework.
Oh, sorry.